Yo, what's going on, guys? Crispy Flakes here. Welcome to Extra Crispy. So one of my subscribers sent me this video. It's a video by a channel known as Barry McCockiner, and it is titled The 5 Most Overrated Players in NBA History, guys. So I love videos like this, but more importantly, like when I watch like a video of somebody calling somebody overrated, I want to see some damn hot takes. Like if we going full on with overrated, man, I want to see some hot takes up in there, just because, you know, there's always like the ones that people say, you know, like Russell Westbrook and, you know, guys like that it's usually split down the middle if he's overrated or not. So I want to see some hot takes up in here, man. Link to his channel in the description below. And yeah, I mean, as long as somebody can back something up, I don't hate on him, man, because we all got our own opinions, and they're all important and valid.
Nothing starts up
in
a
our minds,
firestorm quicker in sports debates than the term overrated. To many sports fans, to be overrated is the same thing as being a
what all Packer
player
fans look like,
when it couldn't be farther from the truth. Just because a player is overrated does not mean that they are necessarily
yeah, that's me when somebody says Luke Kennard's overrated.
Even when talking about the official definition of the word overrate, have a higher opinion of someone or something than is deserved, says nothing about being bad. Yet this, of course, does not stop people from being offended.
Here they go. Square up, man. Square up.
With that said, I am more than certain a large contingent of people will be pissed off at this list. And to that I say, too bad.
Hey, good for you, man. Good for you, man. Let's go.
Overrated players.
Let's do it.
In NBA history.
Let's do it.
Starting off the list at number 5, it's Tony Parker.
Good old Tony. Where do I begin? Entering the NBA as a 19-year-old out of France in 2002,
Yo, I gotta hear
Parker
this.
spent most of his career protected by the San Antonio media. That is to say, nobody really gives a shit about San Antonio, so a lot of the shady shit that Tony did goes unnoticed.
Yo, this guy
Putting
is
aside
savage.
the fact that Tony Parker fucked a teammate's wife, Brent Berry, this list strictly cares about what a player did on the court.
Yeah, did this man cheat on Ivan Longoria or something like that? Wasn't she like a baseball player?
Relative to their reputation. Make no mistake about it, despite the fact that I believe Tony Parker was overrated for reasons I'll get into later, he still did have a hell of a career. A 4-time NBA champion, an NBA Finals MVP, what's up, Steph? 6-time NBA All-Star,
Come on,
and
man.
a 3-time All-NBA second-team selection. And a 3rd-team All-NBA selection in 2009 for good measure. So, you're probably saying, how is he overrated? Of course, this is all just personal preference, but I always felt that Tony Parker was never a dominant point guard, or at least one that deserved
played his
all
role
the
nicely.
recognition that he got from being on a consistently good team.
He definitely played his role
Quite
nicely, I would
simply,
say.
Parker just didn't have elite production on a consistent basis. He never finished top 10 in points per game, and only twice was he ever top 10 in assists per game, never finishing in the top 5. Some may say that Parker lacks the typical explosive individual stats of elite point guards because he happened to play on a team that prioritized sharing the ball. And while this might be true
That
to some
floater was
extent,
sick, though.
Parker didn't necessarily dominate the advanced stats categories either, finishing just top 10 in player efficiency rating twice, never finishing top 10 in win shares, and only finishing top 10 in win shares per 48 minutes one time. And while Parker does have a Finals MVP on his resume, he wasn't necessarily a great postseason
It's against
player
my Pistons,
either,
wasn't it?
finishing with a career postseason player efficiency rating of 16.8, which is good, but not superstar level. His career win shares per 48 minutes in the playoffs is a dreadful .84. So while Parker's postseason counting stats might look nice to some people, they are strictly a product of being at the right place at the right time, and not because Parker was
Yo, he
super
damn crossed
efficient.
himself up
Even
right
in
there.
the 5 NBA Finals Parker appeared in his career, his numbers still don't jump out on the page, despite a Finals MVP. With career averages of 16.5 points and 4.5 assists per game in 29 NBA Finals games, one could easily mistake Tony Parker for that of Kyle Lowry. There's absolutely no question that almost every NBA player in history would take Tony Parker's career in a heartbeat. Just, you know, make sure you don't let your wife anywhere close to him.
Coming in at number 4, it's Isaiah.
Hey! I was just about to say like Tony. I was about to say something about Isaiah Thomas.
Thomas.
Hey!
Drafted
Oh!
60th overall.
Wrong one! Yes!
I'm sorry. Not that Isaiah.
Detroit basketball,
The other
baby.
Isaiah Thomas.
Ah!
The one who used
What?
to play for the Pistons.
The one who Michael Jordan made sure didn't make the Dream Team in 1992. Gee, I wonder why Michael Jordan hated Isaiah
Oh, I'm
Thomas
pissed
so
now.
much. It couldn't be because Isaiah Thomas's Pistons teams beat Michael Jordan's Bulls 3 straight years in the playoffs. No, I'm sure it wasn't that. or the fact that on several different occasions, Isaiah individually ate his lunch. I'm sorry, I don't...
Who are we talking about here? Which one are we talking about now? I have mixed emotions. Yeah, that is, some crazy athleticism by both. Okay.
I mean to go on a diatribe. After all, this is a video explaining why Isaiah Thomas is overrated. So why am I showing clips of him doing very well against the second best
'Cause you mean the other one.
player of all time? Well, because I like to piss off Michael Jordan fans. It's funny. Anyway, let's get to the real reasons why Isaiah Thomas is my fourth most overrated player in NBA.
Now I know why this dude sent me this
like
video.
Every other player on this list, Isaiah Thomas was not a bad player. I cannot stress this enough. He was in fact a great player for a short amount of time.
And that's exactly why I believe him to be overrated. Many people have Isaiah Thomas as a top 2 or 3 point guard of all time, and simply, he just wasn't that good. He had about
That's
2
fair.
or 3 truly elite seasons, and he was done being a good player by the time he turned 29 years old. And while Isaiah Thomas has much better per game averages than number 5 on this list, Tony Parker, had in his career, his advanced stats were not that great. At least, not as great as you would expect for a guy who's consistently considered one of the 2 or 3 best players at his position ever.
Hey, yeah, Joe
Only
Dumars
2
out there
times
with
in his
him.
career was he top 10 in player efficiency rating, and only 3 times was he even top 20. When it comes to other advanced stats categories like win shares, he only finished top...
Bro, I'm not having fun anymore, man. Bro, I thought we were going to come up here, we would be roasting other NBA teams and players, and here we got the Pistons. Come on, man.
10 one time, and never finished top 10 in win shares per 48 minutes. He did do a little bit better in terms of value over replacement, 3 times finishing in the top 5, but still,
His peak was short-lived, and although Isaiah Thomas did get better in the postseason, winning 2 rings and a Finals MVP, goddamn, Steph Curry must feel like shit. His postseason numbers still weren't anything that would make you think this guy was one of the...
Yeah, but what made Zeke great out there? And like, keep in mind, man, I wasn't born yet. It was before I was damn born or anything. But just like historically watching like footage and stuff like that, what made Isaiah Thomas great is that he stepped in when you needed him to. And like to me, that's what makes a great player. Like, I mean, stats are important, but I mean, like, yeah, Kemba Walker put up damn stats on the Charlotte Hornets or Pelicans, whatever the hell they were. You know, like Isaiah Thomas, you know, it's like he might not always put up the most like sexiest Russell Westbrook triple-double out there, but he knew how to win basketball games. And to me, that's, you know, maybe this should say like 5 most overrated players, you know, due to box score or something. I don't really know, man.
2 or 3 best players ever at his position. He ranks 52nd all-time in postseason player efficiency rating, and is just 58th all-time in postseason win shares. Again, these are good numbers, very good numbers even, but they're not those of a guy who should be consistently considered one of the 2 or 3 greatest point guards ever. I believe Isaiah Thomas
I think he's top
is a top
5.
10 point guard
Top
of all
10.
time, and even might be a top 5 point guard of all time. But do I think he's better than Steph Curry? No, he doesn't have Steph Curry's peak years,
It's
or
fair.
the ability to warp the dimensions of the court like Steph does. Do I think he's better than Chris?
I mean, as a Piston fan, I'm gonna say Magic number 1. I think Steph Curry's the second best point guard of all time. I think you got Oscar Robertson up there. You know, Chris Paul, Isaiah Thomas. I mean, Isaiah Thomas has the championships. You know, CP3 got to win a chip out there.
Chris Paul? No. I think Chris Paul was a better defender, and he has way better advanced stats, along with the fact Chris Paul has way more longevity on his side than Isaiah did.
Different era.
And although I'm usually not that high on players who played before 1970, Oscar Robertson has to be ahead of Isaiah as well. For not only his volume and his per-game stats, but
Yeah, I don't
his
know about
efficiency
CP3
was
though.
amazing for his era. Assuming everybody has Magic
Maybe.
Johnson as the greatest point guard of all time, you can make an argument still that Isaiah is top 5. But I would put Isaiah more in that next tier of guys like Steve Nash, Jason Kidd, and Gary Payton. And if you disagree with me, well, that's your problem.
You look like a little
Coming in
crispy
at
right
number
there.
3, it's Carmelo Anthony.
Hey, Melo!
I've always been puzzled by Carmelo Anthony's
Carmelo
popularity.
Anthony!
Sure, he scored a lot of points on a lot of shots, and he played for the Knicks for 6.5 years, but still, I've never quite understood why he seems to have such a dedicated, rabid fan base, one that almost rivals those of Kobe and LeBron. The difference is that LeBron and Kobe...
Because he's got like that Iverson, Tracy McGrady thing to him. You know what I'm saying? I can't really put it into words, but just like that swagger to him. Just like when you see this man get a bucket, it looks sexy every single time, man. The man's footwork, just like the form. He just has that fluidity. I don't know if that's a word, but it is now.
Are two of the greatest players of all time, while Carmelo is not. I've always had a theory that Carmelo Anthony's dedicated following is due to, in large part, because of his really awesome name. Carmelo Anthony
is a great name.
A name that just rolls off the tongue and it sticks out in a crowd. If Carmelo's name was something like Jeff Smith, would anybody really give a shit about the way his career unfolded?
Let's not hate on Jeff Smith. He was the top 10 bench warmer of all time in 1932.
Would anybody really be so adamant that he deserves a second and third chance in the league when it's obvious that he sucks? I don't think so.
I also think Carmelo has remained
Video's about a year old,
relevant
guys.
throughout
Let
these
you know,
years
man.
because he's friends with LeBron James and because he was a part of that fabled top 5 picks of the 2003 draft, along with LeBron, D. Wade, Chris Bosh, and also 2004 NBA champion Darko Milicic. But
Human
let's get
victory
to the
cigar.
nitty-gritty. Let's actually look at what Carmelo Anthony did
Wasn't
on
a
the
cigar,
court
I was just
during his
smoking there.
career. It's undeniable that Carmelo Anthony has scored a lot of points, 26,314 to be specific. Good enough for 17th on the all-time scoring list. There's no question that Carmelo Anthony is going to be a Hall of Famer once he retires, but really that's not saying much anymore. The Basketball Hall of Fame is a lot like the Kardashians. The standards for them letting black men inside of them are not very high. Carmelo does have a scoring title on his resume in 2013, even though he didn't lead the league in points that year. He's finished top 10 in points per game 9 times and top 5 in points per game 6 times. And that's very impressive until you start to look a little bit deeper into the numbers. Carmelo Anthony has been known as an elite scorer, even though he's never really been an efficient scorer. In 13 of his 17 NBA seasons, Carmelo Anthony has had a below league average.
Yo, I think that's a, what do you call that right there, man? That's the, oh my God. Oh, I don't remember. That's like some sort of like math chart stuff going on there he's doing though.
Effective field goal percentage. And again, scoring is what he was known for. And if you can't even efficiently do what you're most known for, how can you be considered a great player?
And not even just talking about the individual stuff, but in terms of team-wise, Carmelo Anthony's never won shit. In fact, he's never come close to winning anything in the NBA. The
Good point.
Any of his teams have ever gone in the
Western
postseason
Conference
was in 2009 when they made the conference finals. Okay, great. One deep playoff run in 17 seasons. And it's not like Carmelo was lighting the world on fire in the playoffs either. His efficiency gets even worse, both in terms of the regular and advanced stats.
So let's try and sum it up a little bit. Carmelo Anthony scored a lot of points, although not on very good efficiency. He's nothing special as a rebounder. He's certainly nothing special as a passer or a defender. He never won anything, and his playoff stats get worse. What exactly am I missing here? Was it that people were mystified by his style of play? I highly doubt that. Even at his athletic peak, Carmelo was never a high-flying athletic freak like that of a Dominique Wilkins or a Vince Carter. Unless you like watching jab steps and mid-range jump shots.
I do!
I don't understand why you'd enjoy watching Carmelo Anthony.
I do like watching that.
He's super rich, has a hot wife, and I don't. So I'm pretty sure he doesn't give a shit about my opinion.
Number 2, Bill Russell.
On the surface, calling an 11-time NBA champion and 5-time NBA...
I like this guy. This man is not afraid to go out of pocket. Okay. That's not Bill Russell. That's God.
MVP overrated. Seems like a pretty outlandish statement, until you start to dig deeper into the numbers and look at what Russell actually did on the court. Russell is a consensus top 10 player of all time, and a lot of people even have him top 5.
He's going at Celtic
usually
fans.
Off the basis that he has 11 rings. And there's absolutely nothing more that grinds my gears as a sports fan than when people overrate players because of their ring count. But it's not just Russell's rings that make him overrated. As I alluded to earlier, his actual production isn't that of a top 10 player ever. I would argue it's not even top 20 or top 30. Bill Russell's calling card was defense, and the numbers seem to back it up. He led the league in defensive win shares a whopping 11 times in 13 seasons. And for a big man, he also wasn't a horrible passer, averaging 4.3 assists per game.
He was just super athletic over everybody,
for
sure.
An elite rebounder, averaging a career 22.5 rebounds per game. And although that number is inflated by the era Russell played in, it's still impressive. My biggest gripe with Russell comes as a scorer. He just wasn't that good. Despite the fact that Russell played in an era with a ton of possessions and the fact that he had a major athletic advantage over all of his opponents besides Wilt Chamberlain, the fact that he averaged only 15 points per game for his career on 44% shooting is
I
extremely
thought it was Stephen Curry
underwhelming.
first. Like, I was
Not
very
only
confused.
did he never come close to leading the league in scoring, he never even led his own team in scoring. Yes, a player who's consistently considered top 5 or 10 ever never led his own team in scoring at any point.
But once again, ain't that what makes him great though? Is just that like he knew how to play his role. But then again, I mean, if you're talking about like top 10 player, I mean, knowing your role would be dominating everything, I guess, right? So, okay.
Career. To me, that's just too much to overlook.
Spider-Man.
Scoring the ball is and always
Pace
will
it down.
be the most important part of basketball. You can be a great rebounder, defender, and passer, but at the end of the day, you still have to put the ball through the hoop. And simply
I've always
put,
struggled
Russell
with that
just wasn't very
and the
good
other
at
parts.
that.
Before I go into detail explaining why his 11 rings are overrated, I should talk about his 5 MVPs first. In his 5 MVP seasons, Russell averaged 16.7 points per game on 44% shooting, with a player efficiency rating of 19.4. He has 5 of the 10 worst NBA MVP seasons in history in terms of player efficiency rating, and 4 of the worst 6.
Yo, Wes
Back when
Unseld.
Russell
What's up with
played,
that? Dave
the
Collins,
MVP
forgot about
was
him.
voted on by the players, and they probably gave Russell a few extra MVPs because they thought Wilt Chamberlain was just a stat-padding douche. Statistically, there's a pretty good argument that Russell didn't deserve any of the MVPs that he won.
The hell is
And this
Walt
gets into
Bellamy?
the next segment of my argument for why Russell's overrated. He's always cited as having elite tangibles, which is the reason for his teams being so successful. And it just doesn't sit well with me. This isn't fucking Remember the Titans. This is not a Hollywood movie. These are professional basketball players. These are professional sports. At the end of the day, the team with the best talent usually wins. And in Bill Russell's era, he had the best teams in terms of talent. That's not to
All
say
the
that
time.
Russell didn't contribute at all to his team's winning, but saying that he's better than Wilt Chamberlain because he had a better supporting cast is just fucking ridiculous. Being in a better situation does not make you a better player, and a lot of people fail to grasp that. And besides,
Yo,
in a
Tom Brady
large
proved that wrong
majority
right
of
there.
Russell's finals wins, he really didn't do anything.
I mean, just look at this shit. And it's not just the finals either.
Ew.
Russell's career postseason player efficiency rating
Oh!
is 19.4, which is good enough for 60th.
What's
all
wrong?
time.
What's
He
wrong with
averaged
them?
16.2 points per game on 43% shooting. Yuck. I've always been of the belief that in every sport, the best players from any era would do well in any era. But Russell is an exception for me. If he struggled to score efficiently in a much faster paced era against far worse athletes than what we have today, what would he be if he played in today's NBA? Would he even make the NBA? He would be a good enough athlete to make the NBA today for sure,
He'd be
but
like
there's plenty of great athletes who aren't
DeAndre
good
Jordan?
NBA players. And
In
even
his
with all
prime?
the modern advancement in training
Ben
and all
Wallace?
that stuff that Russell defenders like to talk about, that doesn't mean that he'd suddenly learn how to become a good offensive player. I think the best case scenario for Russell if he played in today's era would
Big
be
Ben.
as a Ben Wallace type of player. And the similarities are there. Both were considered the best defenders of their era, both were horrible offensive players and free throw shooters, and both won championships.
Big Ben would be
The
a
only
stretch big
difference
today.
is nobody's
I've seen him
pounding the
shoot.
table for Ben Wallace as a top 10 player of all time the way they do with Russell. And if you think I'm an idiot for having Bill Russell as the second most overrated player in NBA history, well, I advise you look at this photo of Bill Russell. Couldn't have summed it up any better myself, Bill.
And coming in at number 1, Kobe Bryant.
Oh. Let's hear it.
I already know what a lot of people are saying right now.
How dare you!
Here's basically why I think Kobe Bryant is overrated. People just cannot stop comparing him and lumping him in with Michael Jordan and LeBron James. Michael Jordan and LeBron are the 2 best basketball players of all time, and their production and efficiency dwarfs that of Kobe's. It's not even a contest. I also cannot stress this enough. Not being as good as Michael Jordan and LeBron James at basketball is not a sin. Not being one of the 2 best players of
I mean, I guess I gotta ask you guys in the comment section below, like, where do you rank Kobe all time? I do think it's an important question to ask. Where he's at. I mean, even as like, I understand like he is the most important Laker of all time, but even I mean, you got like Magic over him. You guys let me know in the comments, man.
all time is not a sin, and yet Kobe fans and media alike just continue to compare him with Michael Jordan and LeBron James. And it's embarrassing. Look, I understand that Kobe copied a lot of Michael Jordan's moves and his mannerisms.
They're pretty identical.
Jutted his jaw and made mean faces after making a contested mid-range shot. I understand that. But that doesn't change the point that people consistently overrate Kobe Bryant. Every argument for Kobe being lumped in with LeBron and Jordan usually relates to some psychological bullshit or some platitudes that actually have nothing to do with what happened on the court. Michael Jordan and LeBron were by far the best players of their eras,
whereas Kobe wasn't even the best player on his own team almost a decade into his career. And there's really no concrete evidence that Kobe was ever the clear-cut best player in the NBA.
Yeah, I wish you know how to read all these
stats.
But
for me, the biggest reason why I think Kobe Bryant is the most overrated player in NBA history is that he carries the reputation as one of the most clutch players ever, and he certainly wasn't that. Sure, you hear all the Mamba mentality and Vino and killer instinct and all the other BS that gets shoved down your throats all the time, but take a second to actually think. What is Kobe Bryant's biggest shot that he ever made in the postseason? What is the biggest and most memorable moment of his in the finals? He played in 7 NBA finals and shot 43% or worse in 6 of them.
Always got it done, though.
NBA finals, he shot just 41% from the field overall, and he was only the clear-cut best player in the finals 1 time in 7 tries. All of the big shots that the Lakers made during Kobe's title runs came by either Derek Fisher, Robert Horry, Ron Artest, or Pau Gasol. In fact, you could argue that Kobe's most memorable postseason moment is when he shot 6 for 24 in Game 7 of the 2010 finals, which he was then rewarded a highly controversial finals MVP for, even though it probably deserved to go to Pau Gasol. While there are plenty of clutch stats out there...
Hey, what do y'all think about this, man? I don't got much of an opinion, to be honest.
I like to go to a
just kind of
broader
listening.
scale because it gives you a bigger sample size. And here's the facts. For his career in the 4th quarter of the NBA Finals, Kobe Bryant shot 36.7% overall, 23.6% from three-point range, and had an effective field goal percentage of just 40.2. In his last 2 final series wins against Orlando and Boston, he shot 29.7% in the 4th quarter. And while he did shoot free throws well in the 4th quarter, which gave him a true shooting percentage of 50.8, that's still nothing to write home about. So tell me, how can a guy who wasn't even the best player on his own team for almost the first decade of his career, was never the clear-cut best player in the league statistically, and wasn't efficient shooting the ball in almost all of his NBA Finals appearances, be considered as good as LeBron James and Michael Jordan? While some may say I'm being disrespectful.
Well, I will say, I mean, it's hard to say about him as being the best player in the NBA when like the guy he's being compared to is LeBron James. I mean, LeBron's better than Kobe. We can all agree with that. So you almost got to you can't really use LeBron in that argument. Then you got to take LeBron out of that argument and say, like, okay, what other guys in Kobe's era were better than Kobe? You know, so I guess that's something to be talked about.
Respectful to Kobe, it must be known that he is one of the greatest players of all time. In fact, among all the players in this video, he's by far the highest on my all-time list, somewhere in the lower part of the top 10. His 13-year stretch from
I agree with that.
2001 to 2013.
I don't think
very,
Kobe's
very
top
good.
3 of all
and
time.
In my opinion, is his best argument for being as high as he is on the all-time list, since very few players have ever had a 13-year span as good as Kobe had. But the numbers, or lack thereof, in Kobe's favor are just far too much to overlook when it comes to comparing him to Michael Jordan and LeBron James. And sorry, Kobe fans, but I really don't give 2 shits about what players think about him. Because what players think about Kobe doesn't change anything that he did on the basketball court. It didn't make him more efficient, and it doesn't make him as good as LeBron and Jordan. I cannot reiterate this point enough, and if it seems like I'm driving it home, it's because I am. I am sick and tired of seeing Kobe ranked as one of the 2 or 3 best players of all time. And because Kobe was tragically taken away from us too soon in January of 2020, I have a feeling that people will continue to overrate his basketball career. Kobe Bryant was great.
Yeah, I will say, as tragic as that was, and I mean, I'm sure it's still affecting a lot of people, and I know I still feel horrible about everything that happened at that time, but, you know, from a basketball standpoint, you know, this is just like, you know, I'm talking strictly about basketball. I did see a lot of people that, like, once Kobe did pass away, they did kind of like switch up their opinion, call him a better basketball player than what he really was, which, you know, from a basketball standpoint, that really shouldn't be a case. I mean, you could, you know, definitely respect and recognize his legacy and everything like that, and I think a lot of us do. But in the end of the day, strictly talking basketball, you know, like we know Kobe as a basketball player in his career, and, you know, his accolades and everything. So
And Kobe Bryant is a legend. He's just not in the same class as Michael Jordan and LeBron James, and Kobe fans need to learn that that's okay.
Did you agree or disagree with my choices?
You had facts and, stats and statistics and analytics to back up all your claims. So, I might not personally agree with everything, but that's the great thing about basketball is I don't have to, and you guys don't have to, and he doesn't have to, and we all have our different reasonings and our different views of basketball players. So, Isaiah Thomas, best point guard in NBA history. I'm just gonna point that out. Okay, guys, all we got, man. Peace out.